Canadian involvement in the American Civil War is a little known piece of our history. And, these men and a number of women, they went down and took part.
I know for us, it's a big project, but if you look at kind of wharfs all over Canada right now, this is kind of a common practice, but it doesn't take away from the fact that neighbors have legitimate concerns.
When you have a disability place for people to get out, that the curb is cut down so that you can bring your wheelchair right up to the door and they can get out.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the week's top stories from CHCO-TV and The Courier. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. Nathalie, we're starting off this week by announcing some really exciting news, which is that the Courier newspaper, which you've been the editor of for almost a year now since we brought it back to life here under the CHCO umbrella, is now coming back to print as well. We've been online for about 8 months, and starting June 1st, it will now be a free community newspaper. Curated this time round. We'll be doing it once a month, so it's not the breaking news stories that we're still expecting to do daily on the website at CHCO.TV, where the Courier is housed online. But really exciting times to bring a new version of print back to the community.
First of all, crazy that I've been here almost a year already, but yes, I'm so excited to have this tactile version of the newspaper coming back to the community, and we've got community members involved as well, so it really is a community effort to get this paper printed and back to folks who want to have it in their hands.
Yeah, we should give a shout out right off the bat to a man from St. Andrews, Guy Grew, who found a grant to print a paper again for the Courier, for us to bring it back to print. So Guy was a big part of us making the print version a reality. We've talked to many people from the community about whether or not print is even worthwhile at this point in time, and there was a lot of nostalgia for having that print edition in your hand, and we thought about what could it be this time around. If we're not going to print it every week like it used to be printed, what should we do to make it something that people still want to pick up? So the first idea was a free paper. It's also geared a bit towards seniors. It's a grant that has to deal with seniors, so the print is a bit bigger. It's also for people who might not necessarily be comfortable reading online, so that's a big part of it too. But definitely exciting to see this paper that we so love, that's been a part of the community since before Confederation, see its life rejuvenated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work that goes into printing an actual newspaper, and Guy actually taught himself layout. So what a tremendous effort from Guy, but it's just, there should be a recognition of how much work goes into putting together a paper. You have to decide the fonts, you have to decide what pages are color and what pages aren't color, and you have to have the work that Mo is doing for advertising as well is a big component, right? Journalism heavily relies on advertising, so that's a big component as well. But there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, so we're very excited for that June 1st publication.
Yes, Mo definitely is a familiar face to not just St. Andrews. He's a face that everyone, I think, attributes with Kennedy House. You always find him there working very hard, and he's a well-known theater personality as well. There's very few plays that I attend locally that I don't see Mo's face in the production, and usually in a starring role, because he's definitely got incredible sense of humor. So he's stepped up to be a part of our team selling ads. So I think that will be ongoing. It is really an interesting time to start an endeavor like this, and I think it makes us appreciate the volunteers we already have as part of the CHCO Courier community when they step up to the plate to make something like this a reality for our entire community, because we all benefit. So over the next week or so, we will be rolling out some of the locations where you will be able to pick up free copies of the Courier as it comes out. We're starting in St. Andrews, St. Stephen, and St. George with the idea is we're just going to feel it out month to month, see how it goes, and see where there might be interest in having these free editions of the paper. It could be that it goes to some hotels as well. We're navigating all this in a very exciting but definitely uncharted way, I think, for a lot of us.
And you know, it will have some of those stories that you're looking for, but also that have longevity. It won't just be breaking news, because we're not really in that kind of format right now, but there will be stories in there that have longevity and really relevance to the community.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, I think that is the problem that print has faced a lot of the time, is this idea that, you know, if you wait till the print edition to come out, most people have already read that breaking news online. So we are separating the two, doing the more investigative, curated pieces for the print edition. You'll also be able to find those online, but this way, you know, if you really do want to see those breaking news stories, still do visit the website every single morning, but look for the print edition to be really a tribute to each month that goes by in our area. But first, we'd love to show you this video we made for an episode of Good Day from the Bay, introducing Nathalie as the editor of The Courier to the community, and introducing the idea of bringing it back to print.
In an age when local newspapers are disappearing across the country, one small community paper is quietly making a return. The Courier has been a part of life in Charlotte County, New Brunswick for more than 160 years. Founded in 1865, it predates Confederation. It has survived 2 world wars, outlasted monarchs and governments, and documented every major chapter in Canadian history from a local perspective. For generations, it told the stories of fires and festivals, elections and anniversaries, small-town triumphs, and everyday resilience. But like so many local papers, the Courier eventually fell silent in June of last year.
That changed in the fall of 2024 when CHCO-TV took on the challenge of buying it and bringing it back to life. We didn't make a big announcement. Instead, we quietly got to work, gathering a team of contributors, some familiar, some new. Longtime reporter Barb Rayner returned, so did cartoonist Ted Michener, whose weekly illustrations have captured both local humor and history for years. And journalist Nathalie Sturgeon stepped up as editor, bringing experience, perspective, and a deep commitment to the stories that connect a community.
The goal isn't just to report the news, it's to preserve it. Because as the saying goes, journalism is the first draft of history. And for more than a century and a half, the Courier has done just that. Not just recording events, but helping generations understand where they've been and what they've stood for.
It's the kind of paper that once reported on the installation of a basketball court in St. Stephen. That court is now believed to be the oldest in the world, and was the Courier's archives that helped prove it.
This paper has been the town crier, the time capsule, the quiet witness to everyday life. It is, simply put, the soul of a community put in print.
And now the Courier is entering a new chapter, still local, still independent, and powered by the people who live the stories they tell.
With CHCO-TV at the helm, the paper is being rebuilt from the ground up by the community for the community. We're already publishing online with news stories every day at CHCO.TV. And starting this June, the Courier returns to print, once a month, free to the public.
Local news shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a given, especially here in a region often overlooked by national headlines, but never short on stories that matter.
What happens at the Courier isn't just a comeback. It's a model, a reminder to other communities that with enough care, enough heart, and enough people who still believe, local news can be saved.
The presses are humming again. The stories are ours again. The Courier lives on.
That was a look at bringing the Courier back to print with me as the editor at the helm. But Vicki, you have a really interesting story that we're going to talk about next. I'm so excited. I was kind of shocked and surprised by the photos you brought back. Tell me about what you and Lucas went to do this week.
So we did a story for the Courier. It was really exciting. It's online right now. The video that you're about to see, chances are that if you're watching this on television right now, it's after the event that's taking place on Saturday, May 24th at 1 p.m. at the Rural Cemetery here in St. Andrews. And Troy Middleton, he is the Vice President of the New Brunswick Historical Society. He is also part of the 20th Maine Volunteer Infantry Company I reenactment group. So I know if any of you have seen sometimes when we've had St. Patrick's Day parades in the past, there's been this enactment group, some are on the New Brunswick side, some on the Maine side, that recreate Civil War scenes Troy is a part of that, so I was very excited to meet him in the cemetery this week to talk about what he's doing, which is honoring 6 Union soldiers from the Civil War that have ties to this part of the world that are buried actually in 4 in the rural cemetery here in St. Andrews, and then another 2 in the Roman Catholic cemetery. So we'll be meeting at the grave of Dr. John F. Stevenson. He was a St. Andrews resident and a doctor. He went to Harvard Medical School, and he fought in the Civil War, and later did die. He, after the Civil War, went down to Texas, but he is buried in the cemetery. He got ill and decided to return to Canada, died on the way home, but is buried here in our cemetery. And the Historical Society was actually able to get his sword. The swords of all doctors who served in the Civil War had their own sword with their name engraved on it. So they were actually able to locate the sword with a collector in Ontario. And raise the funds to bring it back here to New Brunswick. So that will be at the ceremony. But for those who don't get a chance to go to the ceremony, it's something that they actually look to do regularly, and to show North Americans just the ties that Canada and specifically New Brunswick had to the Civil War, and how it played a role in also defining our country as well.
Yeah, I was so intrigued by the story. I got to edit it this afternoon, and it was so interesting how much history is there and how Canadians were actually involved in the Civil War. I don't know how many people are actually aware of that very rich history. And of course, I was very intrigued by Emma's story. Emma is a woman who actually went to fight in the Civil War, but she did so as a man.
Sarah Emma Emmons,
Yes.
but she fought in the Civil War
Sarah.
as Franklin, let me see his last, Franklin Thomas. Really interesting story. She's from Macadavic Lake area here in Charlotte County, and she really believed it was the right thing to do, to sign up. And I think she was so young at the time. She went down to fight in the Civil War, signed in as Frank, fought, and I believe that it goes that she was injured and couldn't be treated. So because then she would give away her identity. So she decided to come back and serve as a nurse after the fact. So she served as both a man and a woman, as a soldier and a nurse. So quite an incredible story. She's not buried here. She actually did die eventually in the United States. But she's one person I imagine that they'll be talking about. I got to talk to Troy extensively about her. She wrote a book, so you can find that as well online now. But another soldier that will be honored is Charles Norris. And if you did what my Ray did, was say Chuck Norris, that's exactly what I did. He was actually born into slavery in Maryland, and served in the Civil War. And Troy, in all his research, he does this incredible research on Atlantic Canadians who served in the Civil War or ended up here after the fact. And what happened with Charles is that he may have met 3 New Brunswick brothers that served in, I'll tell you what, I actually, a little more detail about them, the Gillespie brothers of St. Andrews. There were 3 of them that served in the same place as Charles did, and he thinks maybe it was a conversation they had around a campfire that led to Charles eventually coming to St. Andrews and being buried here in our cemetery. But we do want to, for those of you who can't make it out to the ceremony, here is what Troy had to tell us about who is being honored and why.
Dr. Stevens was born here in St. Andrews, went to medical school at Harvard, and he graduated in 1861 from Harvard Medical School. Came back to St. Andrews, practiced medicine. He was involved with the local rifle company. He was one of the officers. He offered his services to the Union Army as a surgeon, and he was assigned to the 29th Connecticut Infantry. Interesting thing about the 29th Connecticut, it was one of the many regiments raised after emancipation, so all the enlisted men were African American. Through my research, I've identified 29 Black Canadians that served in the same regiment, the 29th Connecticut. 4 of them are from Atlantic Canada, 1 from Nova Scotia, and 3 from here in New Brunswick.
How did you acquire Dr. Stevenson's sword, and what makes it so special?
What's special about the sword is every medical officer was entitled to wear a dress sword. So they weren't issued one, but they were entitled to wear one, and there was a specific style of sword that they could purchase. And Dr. Stevenson had purchased this sword, and on the plaque on the sword, his name and regiment is engraved in it. This year It's going to be on display at the New Brunswick Military History Museum because I'm putting in a museum exhibit there. It starts in September, focusing on New Brunswickers and other Atlantic Canadians in the American Civil War.
Why are you so passionate about, especially Atlantic Canadians' participation in the Civil War? I know I've met you before at numerous parades, including one here in St. Andrews as part of a reenactment group as well. What draws you to it? What do you find so fascinating about it?
Well, I'm a history geek. I've always been interested in history, but Canadian involvement in the American Civil War is a little known piece of our history. And, these men and a number of women, they went down and took part in that conflict. And their stories should be told and remembered. They're veterans just like, the ones that went to, France in the First World War, Second World War, Afghanistan, Korea, whatever. They answered the call to fight for freedom. And they deserve to be remembered and acknowledged for that.
Who other than Dr. Stevenson will be acknowledged this Saturday?
Right down behind us here is Charles Norris. He actually was born into slavery in Maryland in around 1844, and he joined after emancipation. He joined the military with the 43rd U.S. Colored Troops, and he settled here in St. Andrews afterwards. Again, through my research, I've found 3 others from St. Andrews that also served in the same regiment, and their last name was Gillespie. There was 3 brothers that were born here in the St. Andrews area and joined the same regiment that Charles Norris was in. And again, it's one of those things that I kind of think, sitting around the campfire, were they talking? And Charles asked them, "Where are you guys from?" "Well, we're from our little town called St. Andrews." "Where's that?" And maybe that gave them the idea to move here afterwards. I don't know, but.
That was Troy Middleton of the New Brunswick Historical Society speaking to us at the St. Andrews Rural Cemetery. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more of This Week Uncut after this.
You hate at this point in time to throw new ideas at council, but I certainly wouldn't want to just sit on my hands and not tell them that, look at all options, because it's very obvious from this council that some of them are struggling to find out how they move forward.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
Nathalie, it was a busy week in terms of council meetings, also a short week because we had the Victoria Day long weekend. Tuesday started with St. Andrews Council. You were there. Tell us a little bit about what was discussed, what happened.
Yeah, so council was just 1 minute away from having to vote to extend the meeting because there were a lot of big items on the agenda. The Argyle residents explore St. Andrews, and of course the next steps for the St. Andrews Wharf. So people in St. Andrews will be familiar with this project, other people may not. Essentially, they want to refurbish the wharf. The wharf is currently under a weight restriction for the first 1/3 of the wharf, and Market Square is facing some significant erosion from rising sea levels, as well as sinkholes that they've been dealing with and they've been trying to repair. Now, the project essentially has been designed to do a lot of infill around the wharf. And in recent weeks, there's been a little bit of pushback from folks in the community against this, people who own properties along the edge of the water, because it will fundamentally change how that shoreline looks. And throughout the discussion, which lasted about an hour and a half, many councillors all around the table kind of agreed that they just couldn't do anything. But I left that meeting, and I think other people left that meeting having a feeling that the wharf's future is very uncertain.
And for background for people who might not have been following, it's because there is a grant that the town had secured that the federal government would step up to the plate for part of the funding, and it was a climate change related grant. So it would be to really bolster Market Square and the wharf to withstand climate change going forward. But what we're seeing now is that there is pushback from the public about the design that was chosen.
Well, yes, and the infill is the problem here, and Councillor Neal specifically said that he described it as a disaster, and so they've kind of they're between a rock and a hard place when it comes to deciding what they want to do, because as you mentioned, that grant of money, about $5 million to $6 million worth of money, the clock is running out. If they decide to change the scope of the project, they may have to give up the money and reapply. If they decide to do nothing, they have to give up the money, but the clock is running out. They've also set a date of October of 2025 when they want to get this work started, so that they're not into the tourism season in 2026. If they don't get a decision, that's not going to happen either. You've lived here for a long time. What would the town look like without access to the wharf?
Oh my goodness. I really can't imagine St. Andrews without a wharf. My dog and I walk it most days, even in the winter. It's really, I hold it as a very special place in my life, and I really can't picture the personality of the town without a wharf. Again, though, there was a time in this town's history where there were multiple wharves as well. Is there a chance, though, that they can reapply for this funding, or does the clock just run out and that's it?
Yeah, absolutely. They can reapply for this funding because the principle of the project remains to be true, which is that they want to shore up Market Square and the shoreline of St. Andrews along Water Street against rising sea levels. There's no question the ocean is rising. There's no questions that storms that happen in the fall season are getting worse and worse and worse. But there is risk attached to that. They may not get it the second time. So they did discuss, and this has kind of become a legacy project for this council. They really want to get this wharf shored up and protected, but the council has a lot to be proud of. They have accomplished some really great things, but we heard around the chamber that we don't want to be the council that loses the wharf. This town doesn't exist without a wharf. That was the language that was being used. So it feels very urgent and very desperate.
Was there language on the other side, I wonder, from the public, though, that if they go ahead with the wharf, that might not be desirable to town residents, that could be equally as impactful in a negative way?
The community has been clear to council that they want a wharf, and St. Andrews doesn't really have the wharf is so intricately tied to this community's identity, and that's not the question here. The question here is how they do the project in a way that doesn't adversely impact property owners along Water Street and along the waterfront, negatively adverse habitat, which is why they've chosen a project in Campobello Island. But again, if the project doesn't move forward, they don't do the project in Campobello. So all of these things are kind of on the table. Mayor Brad Henderson did discuss an option about where they would reapply for the money and shore up Market Square with some of the rock that you will see along the waterfront now to protect it from those sinkholes and to protect it from rising sea levels. Right now, Councillor Dale Weir talked about wrapping some of the wharf's posts so that it will protect it. The question is, and nobody can answer this question, is how long before the rest of the wharf is in danger of being under a weight restriction. So this is a very intense discussion, and the future of the wharf is very uncertain.
Okay. When you look at the designs, I know that the tricky part here is we had consultations multiple years ago about the design of the wharf, but we're hearing now that maybe the design that's on the table is different from the ones that presented. How much truth is there to that? So
the public was initially offered several renderings of what that wharf project could look like. Councillor Neal said he believed that the option that was chosen by the public was the one that they settled for because it was the cheap option and it was the one that could be done the quickest. So I don't know whether they can go back to the drawing board at this point. I think time has run out. So they have to make a decision with the circumstances they have now. And unfortunately, I don't know that there's any good option at this point.
Okay, so the decision might ultimately be just to reapply and start from the beginning.
Yes, and look at how they fix that first third of the wharf, at least, at minimum, to try and shore it up and make sure that they either have to extend the weight restriction or close the wharf altogether.
To cars.
To
it
cars.
Could still be a walking wharf. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Here is my conversation with Mayor Brad Henderson. And the discussion about the wharf didn't seem overly positive. What do you think is the best solution to move forward?
I think right now you're seeing a council that's kind of almost split. You've got a couple councillors that are for the current project. You've got a couple councillors that are against. And then you have, I guess you could say, a bulk of councillors that are just asking for more time and more information. Ideally, asking for that more information would have been done even a year and a half ago when the project was selected, but I understand that there's been some new concern that came out of the community, and the council represents the community, and I think for them it's a significant decision. Although the timing isn't ideal, I will say that you often hear of councils don't care what the public thinks, they don't listen, you don't write a letter, it doesn't matter. I've got to defend this council. There's been a number of situations where they've got feedback from the public and they've stayed the course. Like you'd say, an apartment building, we've had pretty much every development we had in town had opposition, and council stayed the course and had that done. But in the same sense, there's been times where council has got feedback from the public, considered what they said, and adjusted accordingly. Most notably, the council meeting before this, they made amendments to some wording around fencing in the town of St. Andrews. That was spurred from a letter that came from the public. So council, although it's very late in the process, again, ideally it would have come forward earlier. Council does care about all residents, and although you can't make everybody happy, I think that some councillors are struggling how to move forward since this, I guess you could say, the greater concern has come forward really at a point where it's supposed to go out to tender.
Well, and it was said twice in the meeting, you're running out of time. You're running out of time on getting the project started, but also the funding that's available to you. So you mentioned during the meeting that there's a potential meet in the middle situation where you could shore up Market Square. How likely is it that you abandon the project that it currently is and for something else in favor of shoring up Market Square?
I can't speak to how likely it is, simply for the fact that it's the will of council as a whole. But I will say that this is something that has been in my mind for a while. For me, it wasn't plan A, but when you're in a situation with a community, you always want to be thinking of plan B, C, D, etc. And for me, this is one of the things that I have thought about in the past, that if this gets derailed, we have this money, and there's no guarantee that, if we apply again, that we can't get it. But there's no guarantee that you can get it. So there is some significant risk. But when you have other levels of government willing to pay the bulk of a project, is there something that you could do with that money that still provides investment in your community, addresses some of the concerns that you have? And that's really where that proposal came from. So you hate at this point in time to throw new ideas at council, but I certainly wouldn't want to just sit on my hands and not tell them that, look at all options, because it's very obvious from this council that some of them are struggling to find out how they move forward.
So I know this is a little bit difficult for you because you're gonna be gone. But so if in eventuality you don't do this project in the way that with the infill, does that mean you also don't have to do Campobello, or is that a project that's already been kind of set in stone?
No, so Campobello is conditional on the project going ahead. And the other thing I'm hearing out in the community is it costs $300,000. It's not going to cost $300,000. The most that it will cost is $150,000. It's important to note that we do have another partner that requires remediation. It is the St. Andrews Biological Station. However, we're only hearing about Market Wharf and the concerns about the remediation right there.
And so there was a bit of pushback in the last week or so. I guess how much of that factored into the discussion that happened on Tuesday night?
I think it was the factor. This has been not something that's been sitting on council's plate a week. It's not something that's been sitting a month. This has been years in the making, and some of the concerns have got members of council questioning. And, I can appreciate that there's councillors that are worried that if they make a mistake, the impacts it could have long term. This isn't something that you could just reverse. We'll talk about a one-way street. The one-way street isn't working out. You just take the signs down. This isn't quite that easy. And I think the magnitude of this decision is why you're seeing council really listen and why you're seeing them question. In fairness, though, I've got Councillor Neal. Councillor Neal has been very consistent for a while on his concerns over it. I've had Councillor Ware not so much say that it had to be done, but wondering, a little surprised that either the engineers or the approval, which comes from DFO, didn't request it. So, but really for council to actually look at kind of tidal flow and doing studies around that, the actual request to see what that looks like, that is a new request as a whole from council. So we're just getting details about that right now.
That was Mayor Brad Henderson discussing the future of the St. Andrews Wharf. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with This Week Uncut. Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
So you went to Eastern Charlotte, we divided, we conquered. You were there for a presentation by Globe about Blacks Harbour's water supply.
As we all know, covering the water issues in Blacks Harbour, this has been ongoing for quite some time. It even predates your time here at CHCO and The Courier, but I remember running into you covering this extensively back when you were at Global News. So we have a long history covering this, so it's nice to see steps going in the right direction, that they are looking to find a solution.
Yeah, I mean, for folks who aren't familiar, Blacks Harbour's water supply is owned by a private company called Connors Brothers. It has been since the establishment of Blacks Harbour, but that water supply has become discolored. They deal with frequent boil water advisories, and council has been very adamant that they want to fix this for the folks of Blacks Harbour. Even at the last meeting, they discussed maybe some sort of financial discount for folks who are continually paying their water bill for water that is not of standard quality. Now, it is important to note that this water is tested regularly, and it is not unhealthy. If it was unhealthy or not drinkable, there would be a boil water advisory.
But I think that anyone who saw an episode of this show, also the news, Newsbreak 26, and also council meetings of Eastern Charlotte will think back to a meeting where Councillor Adam Hatt, who represents Blacks Harbour for Eastern Charlotte Council, brought jars of water that technically are safe to drink or shower in, but just to show people in the rest of Eastern Charlotte what they were dealing with in Blacks Harbour. And I think when you have that visual image of, would I really want to wash my hair in there, or my dishes, or give a glass of water to my family, it does, whether it's safe or not, when you see that brown colored water, it's not exactly the most inviting thing to think that you're living a life that has just a basic need taken care of.
And think about all the people and businesses who have invested their own money in filtration systems, in replacing towels and sheets and clothing that they've ended up having destroyed because of the quality of water. So it's a financial question mark about how much money has been either lost or spent trying to figure this out, but also to replace things that have been lost to this water quality.
So it was interesting to see a timeline put forward. Laura Legere made the presentation to council looking into its well exploration for the area. So they had an action item since, I guess, their last meeting with council, which would have been back in April, to get some more agreements going forward with landowners to explore well exploration. Here is Laura Legere's presentation to Eastern Charlotte Council.
So my name's Laura Legere. I'm the project manager for Globe for this water exploration study. So on the agenda tonight, what does the project consist of? So the project is a well exploration project for Blacks Harbour. The project was set up so that phase would be a standalone project, and any future infrastructure, construction, design and construction would be a future project once, it's a bit better understood where a water source will be located, because that can impact how much the infrastructure will cost and what specific infrastructure is needed. This is our current primary area of focus, in particular the properties north of the highway there. And our action items from our last meeting were to prepare some additional landowner agreement documents, and that's been completed, and those have been sent out, and to respond to some email questions from one particular landowner, which is, I had marked it complete, but as I was driving here, I think we got some more communications, so complete/ongoing. And for the municipality, it was to follow up with some of the landowners that had already received agreements and send the additional agreements to some of the new properties that we had discussed during our previous meeting. And we're hoping if we can try to touch base with the landowners to understand, not necessarily have everything signed, but at least to get a general idea if they're willing to entertain allowing the exploration process or not, by the end of the month would be the target timeline for that. If we get approval from some or all of the landowners, that would be the step that we would do next, would be to do the on-site screening, the EIA request for approval, and then once the EIA approval process is complete, we would hope to receive their approval to continue with physical exploration. So that would be well drilling, construction of access roads, pumping tests. And then the very last task is to assess all the data that we've collected throughout the process of drilling the wells and pump testing the wells. And then we submit that to the province for their review. And that's the report that would be used to set the approved pumping rate for the wells, assuming all goes as hoped. The next phase, funding approvals and hopefully a design and construction project.
That was Laura Legier presenting to Eastern Charlotte Council at their meeting for the month of May 2025. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more of This Week Uncut.
I just want to talk a little bit about our ALS walk in St. George that's coming up on June the 4th. And it starts at the St. George Credit Union, and it's going to the Eastern Charlotte Municipality Building.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
It was a short week, but a busy week, a really busy week. There was St. Stephen Council too.
Yeah, I mean, there's never a dull moment at CHCO-TV or The Courier. So we will talk more about St. Stephen. We just haven't gotten there yet. It was a bit of a somber meeting given the passing of Earl Eastman, and they released a wonderful statement on behalf of council, and in a very nice moment, during the moment of silence, everybody in the room stood up. So,
yeah, definitely. Earl will be very missed. I can't really think of our community without him. It's really, I think one of the beautiful things about doing local news and local programming is that you really do get attached to a lot of the people and places you cover, and you know, it is our community too. We live here, so definitely a loss that I think people are feeling beyond just the boundaries of St. Stephen too.
Yes, for sure. But you have some things coming up in St. George.
I'm very excited about this. A lot of you watched our show with Sid Carnigan and his wife Karen, where Sid and Karen shared their journey of Sid being diagnosed with ALS 6 years ago. They're really a well-known St. George family, really loved, and I thought it was really powerful for them to want to come on, share their story. One of the big takeaways from it is just that people with ALS, they're really the same person. They might have issues with mobility and speech, but inside they're feeling all the same things, thinking the same things. So to make sure, if you do know someone with ALS, to treat them like you always have. Go make time, spend time with them. Don't shy away just because you don't understand. Go make the effort to understand and realize your friend is still there and wants you in his or her life. Karen was actually at Eastern Charlotte Council this week, so it was lovely to get to give her a hug again, because I feel like I haven't known them that long, but I feel like they're family already, and this is again what I'm getting at when you get super attached to a lot of the people and places and stories that you cover. So there is a walk for ALS taking place on June 4th in St. George. I am going to be walking for Sid. I think everyone at CHCO that's able to make it that day is going to be walking for Sid. I'm going to be posting some links on my Facebook page for how you can give to the fundraising that Sid is doing specifically, but there are other walks you can join us too. But I want to highlight Sid's walk because he's become instantly a part of an honorary member of the CHCO team. It's taking place Wednesday, June 4th at 5 p.m. It's the ALS Walk Strong, and the walk will begin at, this is how my eyes are right now, at Brunswick Credit Union. So we're really looking forward to taking part in that. I know that you were touched by being here for Sid's episode. I could hear that there were tears in the control room when you were trying to do camera switching.
Yeah, I mean, I said to Patrick, this is one of the reasons why I came to work here. These these really heartfelt stories about people who are often not given a voice or a platform, not to talk about a political issue, but an issue that's impacting their everyday life, but also impacting thousands of Canadians.
It was neat too to hear at the end of Eastern Charlotte Council, when they take their time, the mayor and the councillors, to say a few words to the camera, that Karen got up to speak at public comment, and Mayor John Craig said, I think everyone watched the interview with you and said, interview of the year, he called it, and it really was, I think, for our community, you have those moments like that when someone says they want to come on and share their story, and you feel the ripple effect of it for a really long time. And it really does. We joke now here that we say it takes a village, but it takes a whole county, and a powerful county that we are, for sure.
Yeah.
But these are the words that Karen had to say when she had 5 minutes to address council and the public.
I just want to talk a little bit about our ALS walk in St. George that's coming up on June the 4th. And it starts at the St. George Credit Union, and it's going to the Eastern Charlotte Municipality Building. And it starts at 5 o'clock, and I really like to encourage everybody to participate. It's our second walk. Last year we had about 100 people attend, so it was for the first walk, it was really good. And I just want to tell you a little bit about, we have a gift basket, and the value is $1,000. And people that have donated things for the gift basket is Connors Brothers, Eastern Charlotte Municipality, Cook's True North Salmon. There's a wool quilt made by Wizard of Felt. Uncle Maids is to give a $100 gift card. Country Market is $25 gift card. The credit union staff has done a tree tea oil. St. George Subway is 10 vouchers for 6-inch subs. Boyd's Home Hardware is a $20 gift card. And Wolfhead Smokers is a gift card. The tickets are $5 a piece, or 3 for $10. And all the money goes to the New Brunswick and Nova Scotia ALS Society for equipment. As I've said, every household, it costs about $80,000 to equip an ALS patient, and all that equipment is provided by this ALS Association. And I really thank the council and the municipality for allowing us to have this happen. And I think the fire department is going to be involved with us, and the RCMP. So I'd just like to encourage everybody to get out and support. And it shows, especially Sydney, it shows Sydney that the people in the community care. And it's not an easy disease. And so there's people that have passed, that family could get out and still show that, I remember you, I haven't forgot. And so that's very important to let people feel cared for. And one other thing I just wanted to mention, I don't know if it's happened or not, but when you're talking about picnic tables, I was just wondering if you bought any disability picnic tables, like an extension, so that people can haul up with their wheelchairs and have a little bite to eat, because you can't get on our picnic table. So that, and another thing is, someday we never thought of these things until you get in our situation, but Sid's not able to get out of the car on our sidewalks in St. George because of the lip, right? So some places it would even be nice if there was when you have a disability place for people to get out, that the curb is cut down so that you can bring your wheelchair right up to the door and they can get out. So those are just something to think about. Thank you.
That was Karen Kiernigan addressing Eastern Charlotte Council at their May 2025 meeting this past week. Another busy week ahead for next week. What's on the plate at the Courier?
Well, we have a lot. There's always a lot on the plate. But Aidan has started with us, and people will notice that some of his stories are already online. We've got him all set up with a nice little bio and a photo there, so he's producing content for us. He's pitching his own ideas, which is so wonderful and refreshing. I'm always excited to see that camaraderie. I have it here with all of you, but it's so wonderful to have another person who thinks kind of just like me. So it's great, and we're excited to have him. He's also pitching some investigative stuff. So.
It's pretty exciting to have him on your team. If you watched This Week Uncut last week, we had Aidan Rayner. He's joined our team for the summer. He is going into his third year next year. Concordia University has ties to this part of the world, so is here for the summer. He's editor-in-chief of the Concordian, their newspaper at Concordia next year as well, but he has this incredible investigative beat that he is passionate about, just like yours truly, right here. And so he's been a wonderful addition and started really hit the ground running in terms of getting really great articles out, attending council meetings, and I know he's already pitched going to Grand Manan next week. So a lot on Aidan's plate already. I hope he knows what he signed up for.
Well, I'm not going on a boat, so if he's eager to go to Grand Manan, I love Grand Manan. Don't get me wrong; it's the boat part that scares me.
She's helicopter only. It's getting expensive. And also this week we had another former summer student. Really, he was volunteering here when he was 15 years old. I think everyone in Charlotte County knows Ian Curran, in part because of the many news stories he's been doing here since he was really in high school. I met him at St. Stephen High School at a presentation that was happening there years ago, and you just met this eager kid who really was fascinated by all aspects of TV and really filming things on his own, doing all kinds of video projects. And so he started here so young, eventually became one of our summer students for multiple summers. And this summer, he's going into his third year at St. Thomas in the fall, but he's going to be with the CBC Fredericton team this summer. So he came to say his Charlotte County goodbyes this week and spent the day with us here. So it was great to see his face. I will love following his journey. It'll be a sad summer, the first one we let them fly and go somewhere else. But it is incredible to watch him become a young journalist.
Yeah, I took part in that program as well. I got my internship in my 5th year, and it is
CBC Fredericton.
Yeah, as CBC Fredericton, it is truly a very rewarding experience, and I hope that he trains in as many positions as he possibly can. The more versatile you are, the more likely you are to land on your feet. He has time though; he's only in his 3rd year, but I'm excited to see what he does in CBC.
I'm looking forward to following his everything from his first story to whatever he does next with CBC. We had another legend, CBC legend, in our studio this week. He's also a CHCO legend, Ross Ingram. He's a part of our team now. If you watch CHCO regularly on television, you'll see his As I See It moments, and that's where Ross addresses the camera like Andy Rooney he has almost 70 years of experience in broadcasting. He's nearing close to his 90th birthday. Still has this magnificent voice that honestly you can't train anyone to sound like that.
They don't make voices like that anymore, do they?
It's a beautiful thing. He could read a phone book and you would sit and listen to it, but he was actually the first voice of CBC Fredericton, not just radio, but also television. So radio 1964, Ross's voice hit the air first before anyone. So we couldn't be more proud to have him on our team now. He sat down with us in studio, shared knowledge of really what the takeaways are from when he used to do news, and looking at that for where we're at now in terms of the state of local news in, I want to say Canada, but really is a worldwide issue. What was your takeaway from listening to the conversation with Ross?
Well, it's so interesting to see how far things have changed since he started doing things, and he was talking about the different cameras that he used and that sort of thing. As much as journalism changes, it stays the same, right? He was providing the public with valuable information, and that is true today. So it was very interesting to listen to him. I'm excited to listen to him even more, and I'm grateful to have been a part of listening to that conversation.
Yeah, he mentioned really that's it, conversation. He said 2 people talking to each other should still always be 2 people talking to acknowledge the humanity of each other too. And another great takeaway he said is that when they were doing TV back then, they were just always on television or always on the radio. There wasn't anything syndicated to throw to. And a lot of what really did well was the truly local stuff. And we know that from practice here. So I always think when people say local news is failing, it wouldn't and isn't in places where it's really done. I
do think, though, he mentioned in his interview that he never really knew who was coming in for an interview. Yes. So I think I think Patrick should maybe just start bringing folks in and just
Haven't you noticed?
Surprise. And so we can think on our feet. I think
Some of my days do go like that.
That's true. Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Let's take a look, though, at Ross was here. He filmed an interview, but he also filmed a few of his stand-ups. So here's a look at Ross Ingram on CHCO right now.
The relationship between Canada and the U.S. is a strained one these days. It's a three-level thing. Washington and Ottawa at the highest level. New Brunswick and Maine coping with the fallout from those tariff decisions. Then it's up to us, the folks in the province and the state, to live with the results as they unfold. Washington, D.C. and Ottawa have always been distant from this part of the world, and the people of Maine and New Brunswick have adjusted on a friendly basis as they adapted those rulings from on high to suit the times and conditions. Take the War of 1812, for instance. Canada was being invaded in the Niagara area. The word came down from Washington that a state of war existed between the United States of America and the Dominion of Canada. Nobody in either government cared about the far reaches of their countries, Maine and New Brunswick. Being ignored worked for both of us. The story goes that American troops in down east Maine were far from being prepared to invade or even defend themselves. Here on the Canadian side, we were slightly better off. So when we found out that the troops in Calais couldn't celebrate July 4th with gun salutes because they didn't have the gunpowder, we reached across the border and sent them over a shipment of gunpowder, and the 4th of July festivities went on as planned. Technically, it was treason. Providing aid and comfort to the enemy is the official designation, but no one found out until long afterwards, and nobody cared. That spirit of friendship still remains more than 200 years later, and stands to continue regardless of what transpires in Washington and Ottawa. As a wise man once said, this too shall pass. I'm Ross Ingram, and that's the way I see it.
That's where we're going to leave things for this week.
That sounds good to me. We'll see you next time on This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.